All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are sitting down or focused and ready for this episode. We've got a lot of really good information coming your way today, and we're going to dig deep on a key strategy that a lot of people have heard about if they've ever looked into real estate investing, tax strategies, or just quite simply wondered about how to save money through their mortgage. This strategy called the Smith Maneuver has come up, and it's come up for years and years for a lot of people, and we get questions about it on a daily and weekly basis, and more so recently as we've seen this maneuver come up in questions over the course of the last few months. So we figured, who else other than the son of the man who created and came up with the concept of the Smith Maneuver, but to come on the show and explain and really break down what the Smith Maneuver is all about. Who does it benefit? Who is it good for? And really, how does it work in practice? Now, I'm the first one to admit that the Smith Maneuver is not, and actually Robbins is probably the first one to admit, the Smith Maneuver is not for everyone out there, but there is a place for it for the right person. And if that right person is you, then you're listening to the right episode, because we are bringing you a really great episode here today with Robinson, where he breaks down the ins and outs of this program, how it works, what you need to do. And of course, if you need to find out more about this afterwards, reach out to us and we can explain or put you in touch with the right people to do so. As always, guys, this episode is brought to you by Thrive Mortgage Co. We are the partners here at Thrive Mortgage. Derek Williamson, Dean Lawton, and myself, Alex McFadden, and we look to help our clients create wealth through real estate. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about how we can help you, just make sure to reach out, send us a direct message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Last but not least, if you haven't already done so, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It would be a huge help, and we're going to send you a beautiful Thrive mug for your efforts. It means a lot to us, and we're going to make sure that it is worth your while with this delicious coffee and mug coming your way. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show with Robinson Smith, and let us know what you think. See you soon. What's up, guys? You are listening to the YVR REMO show, where we talk all things Vancouver real estate and mortgages, take boring topics and make them interesting. Make sure to stay tuned to listen to everything you need to know how to put cash back in your pocket, create wealth in real estate, and simplify the complicated. Mr. Robinson Smith, thank you very much for joining us today. We're very interested to have you on today. We're somewhat intrigued. Maybe it's because of your wood backdrop, but I think it's a little bit more to do with the a little bit more to do with the mystique behind the maneuver, as you've shared with us that you're going to talk a little about today, and the mystique behind it. It's the Smith Maneuver that we're talking about here today. And it's something that we have heard about for years and years and years. It's been around for quite a few, in fact. And we're excited to really dig deep because, over the past, 1, 2, 3 years, we've noticed that you've really come to the market with a new light and trying to show Canadians and homeowners how to make some money and put it back in their pockets. Welcome to the show today, Robinson.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, so really quickly, we got to give a little backstory. Robinson, I'm not going to take all the wind out of your sails here, but you are a financial strategist, and we like strategists around here. This podcast is all about trying to find ways to help the homeowners strategize to either build their wealth through real estate or their own property, and a bit of both would be great. And you from what I understand, have built off what your father coined the Smith Maneuver years ago, and you're taking it to the next level. Robinson, let's just dive right into it at this point right now. Why are you bringing this back to market or revitalizing it now? What's with today?
Sure. Well, my dad developed the strategy back in the mid 80s when he became a financial planner, and he was disappointed in the fact that the Americans could deduct the interest on their mortgage and we Canadians couldn't. And so he decided to level the playing field. So, of course, he read the Tax Act, as anyone would, and developed a strategy which allows a Canadian homeowner with a mortgage to convert that expensive non-deductible debt to tax-deductible debt. Now, he put his private clients into the strategy. It was very basic at the time. Suitable financing was almost impossible to find. So it was a bit of a challenge, but it worked. And he put his private clients into the strategy for about 15 years. And then he retired to write his book on the strategy, which is Your Mortgage Tax Deductible by Fraser Smith. That came out in 2002. And he spent the next few years traveling across Canada, speaking to the clients of accountants, mortgage brokers, investment advisors, and just getting the word out. He retired, he came back into advising in 2005, and I joined him in 2006. And so we were back in private practice. And apart from those 3 years, when he was going across the country, no one named Smith has really gone out there and promoted this strategy and let Canadian homeowners know that this was available to them. So I was in a position to sell my advisory in 2018 to a colleague of mine. So I did so in order to, use a megaphone to get this strategy out to Canadians coast to coast, rather than educate them one family at a time across the desk as I was as an advisor. So, I felt it very important to let Canadians know that this strategy can help them reduce their tax bill, can help them eliminate their expensive non-deductible mortgage in record time, and help them start saving significant sums each and every month now, not later, and take advantage of compound growth, because it's not easy out there. We Canadians don't have it easy. I don't know if we ever have, and we certainly don't have it any easier now, and it's not going to get any easier with what's going on in the world these days. So we need tax relief. We need to be able to start saving for our retirement. We need to be able to eliminate expensive debt. And that's exactly what the strategy accomplishes. And so, it's important for me to get the word out to Canadians.
So with everything that's happened in the last 4 to 6 months with the world events and the economic events, would you say that this type of a strategy is becoming more and more important to Canadians today?
Yes, I would. The biggest issues that the strategy addresses is, a few things, taxation being one of them. We Canadians are consistently in the top 5 highest tax-paying citizenry on the planet, right? And we pay more in taxes than we do food, clothing, and shelter combined, and that's not going to change. We're not going to start paying less tax, especially with what's going on, the way the government's spending is, what's happening in that front, and we have job insecurity these days, and the expensive debt we have that is tied up in our house in the form of a mortgage. We've seen what's happened with mortgage deferrals and all that sort of stuff. So we need to do something. We need to pull our head out of the sand and implement a financial strategy which can take care of those issues, plus see us start saving money on a monthly basis, which doesn't cost us anything out of pockets to do so. The strategy doesn't require anyone to add cash for their investment program.
Yeah, that's huge. So why don't we dig into it? What the heck are we even talking about here? The strategy. We should probably explain what the heck the strategy is we're talking about. We're just trying to lead our listeners on a little bit here. We've got some secret surprises here for you. So I know for a fact that I would imagine a large amount of the listeners who are tuning into the podcast here or watching the video have heard of this maneuver or something like it, or maybe a word around it, because I do hear it brought up quite frequently in different conversations. And quite honestly, most people don't really know what they're asking for. So why don't we just say in a nutshell, Robinson, what is the Smith Maneuver? And then let's do a deep dive. Let's get into it here.
Sure. Basically, the Smith Maneuver is a mortgage debt conversion strategy. We scrape together a down payment. We go to the bank and we say, can I borrow $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 so I can buy my house? So let's just use $400,000. We now have $400,000 mortgage, and we've promised to the banker, our spouse, and God that we're going to pay this off over the next 25 or 30 years. Well, this debt is non-tax deductible. In Canada, if we borrow to consume, like cars, groceries, vacations, dinners, and even our principal residence, we cannot deduct the interest on that loan from our income. But if we borrow with the reasonable expectation of generating income, then we can deduct the interest. So there's a big difference between two types of debt here. So now we've gone out, we've got our house, we've got all this non-deductible debt, which takes a huge chunk of our paycheck each and every 2 weeks or month or whatever it is. We need to change the nature of that debt. And if we have the appropriate financing, which is a re-advanceable mortgage, you guys will be very clear on what those are, I would hope. We're talking the Manulife One, the Scotia Step, etc. With this type of mortgage, and many Canadians already have this type of mortgage, they just don't fully realize that they do, or they don't fully realize how they should be utilizing it. But if we do have a re-advanceable mortgage, then when we make a mortgage payment, our very first mortgage payment after we get this mortgage, some of it goes to interest in the form of non-deductible interest. Some of it reduces principal. So if $1,000 of that mortgage payment reduces that mortgage balance from $400,000 to $399,000, the attached line of credit, which is secured by the house as well, the mortgage knows this. And so the mortgage says, oh, you just paid down $1,000 on this loan you have with us. Well, you know what? We're willing to always have you owe us the original amount of $400,000. So we'll let you borrow that back. And so what most Canadians do with this is they pull that out and they make a car payment, they go on vacation, and all they're doing is paying down non-deductible debt on one side of the mortgage and replacing it with non-deductible debt on the other side of the mortgage. And replacing it with what? This debt is being acquired to pay for depreciating assets, cars which depreciate, dinners which get eaten, vacations you come back from and only have photographs of. So this is wealth destruction. We're maintaining our non-deductible debt, and we're buying assets which decline in value over time. But as I said, if we borrow to invest with the reasonable expectation of generating income, we can deduct the interest. And so if we borrow to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, your business, somebody else's business, investment real estate, then we can deduct the interest, meaning that debt is very, very cheap. And we're necessarily acquiring assets which are going to appreciate in value over time. And that's wealth creation. So recognizing the two different types of debt is extremely important. It's a big part of the education of Canadian homeowners. But effectively, to get back to your question, all we're doing is using the regular mortgage payment we're making anyways, whether we're doing the Smith Manoeuvre or not. We're reaccessing the equity on a monthly basis. We're getting it invested. Do this each and every month. We continue to increase our tax deductions that we're generating. We're able to take the annual tax refund that we get simply because we're implementing the strategy and use that as a prepayment against the mortgage, reborrow that amount, invest as well. And because we're prepaying this mortgage at least once a year, we're out of it faster, and faster is better. So, and lastly, we're also investing on a monthly basis right now, taking advantage of compound growth. I'm dragging on here, but a lot of Canadians, the typical approach to their two most important financial issues in their lives, their mortgage and their retirement savings, the answer of which to attack first is made for us, not by us. Because if we don't make a mortgage payment, we're in trouble. Someone wants to take the house away. But if we don't start saving for our retirement, nobody cares. And so that's what happens. We focus on the mortgage at the expense of not investing for our future. But the Smith Maneuver allows us to do that right away, and it doesn't take any extra cash from the homeowner.
You know, the thing that I think of what you said that I want to digest, I think a business owner, typically when you talk about tax deductible interest, I find that quite frequently because we do help our clients acquire second and third properties quite frequently. It's a concept that for someone who maybe doesn't run a business can go a little bit over their head as to what does that mean? What does that mean, Robinson, in a nutshell? We know what that means, but let's explain that to just a general listener who's maybe trying to wrap their head around what the heck does tax deductible interest even mean to me, to my financial standing?
Okay, so let's say because I borrow to invest, and I do this on a monthly basis, at the end of the year, I've paid $6,000 in interest. Now, the government comes in for a lot of people before you get your paycheck every 2 weeks. You look at it and you see the government is coming taking their fair share of what they think is their fair share of your taxes off at source. So you get paid less. The government is taking tax each and every 2 weeks. Well, at the end of the year, when you send your tax return in, CRA looks at this and says, oh, geez, this person doesn't owe that much tax. We took too much tax. We have to give them some money back. And there's your tax refund. And so basically, if I pay $6,000 in deductible interest throughout the course of the year, that ends up being subtracted from my taxable income. So this generates a tax refund. If it's non-deductible interest of $6,000 I'm paying, then I don't get that tax deduction or the resultant refund.
Perfect. That's a great explanation. Thank you so much. And the reason I want to really break these things down is because I find quite frequently some of those little concepts are the ones that are missed by people, and those are the big ones that once someone hears this, Robinson, they're gonna understand what the power of that really is, whether it's $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 to reduce that. As a business owner, if you're a business owner listening to that, that's even more important in some circumstances, as we all know about the opportunity to reduce our expenses or reduce our taxes by adding or maneuvering expenses.
Yeah, and another way to put it is, $6,000 in non-deductible interest, that's gone. I've paid that. But if it's tax deductible, then let's say I'm at the 50% marginal tax rate, just to make the math easy for me. If I've paid 6,000 and the government didn't know it in deductible interest, and the government didn't realize that, they didn't know about it throughout the year, because I'm at the 50% tax refund tax bracket, I get $3,000 back as a refund. So that's $3,000 that I've already paid. I get it back.
It goes a long way.
Yeah.
Goes a long way. In regards to the investment component to this, what would you say is the most common investment that you see people taking on? Like, is it people putting money into the markets? Obviously, someone looking to, buy an investment property, as you're paying down $1,000 a month, you're not going to have that down payment, very quickly, right? So what are you kind of seeing from that side of it?
Yeah. It varies. I'm not an investment advisor anymore. There are a lot of people who are do-it-yourselfers, and so they have, say, a Quest trade account, and they buy index funds or ETFs or whatever. There are a lot of people who realize that they're not professional financial advisors and they need some help or should get some help, and so then they go talk to an investment advisor. And maybe it's mutual funds, maybe it's different stocks. There's a whole range of things that you can invest in. Now, whether you are investing wisely or not, I don't know. This is a long-term strategy. This is a till death strategy, as long as it gets. And we're talking about your family's future security. So you don't want to take this monthly borrowing to invest in your cousin's internet startup. Well, Buddy said this is the next hot stock. Go into something safe. Go into something you understand. Now, when you mention real estate, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are relatively familiar with the fact that, okay, I've had my house for a while, I've paid the mortgage down a bit, I've got some equity. I'm going to go slap a Heloc on my house, and I'm going to pull out the 80 grand I have available to me, and I'm going to use it as a down payment on a rental property, right, through the Thrive Boys. Great. Now you've got a rental property. What you've done is pulled from your home in order to invest, whether you realize it or not. And the interest on that is tax deductible. Fantastic. That's great. You're doing the right thing here. You're borrowing to invest, not borrowing to consume. But for someone who wants to implement the Smith Maneuver, they can do that as well. If they refinance their home but get the right mortgage product, they can still access that equity they have immediately available to them and use that as a down payment on a rental property. But now they have the ability, because it's not just a HELOC with a fixed limit, it's a re-advanceable mortgage. Now they have the ability to work at converting their non-deductible debt, because the limit on that line of credit increases month after month after month. So the right mortgage product is crucial to being implemented. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see is people on the internet forums. Everybody listening, do not take any advice on the strategy from the internet. You're going to blow yourself up. There's so much misinformation. But that's what a lot of people are saying. Oh, the Smith Maneuver, all you got to do is, maybe you've got a Royal Bank traditional mortgage. You can go to Scotia if you want, get a HELOC in second position, pull it out, invest it there. The Smith Maneuver. No, that is not the Smith Maneuver. So it's very important that you have the right financing.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to touch on how much of this is tax deductible. Like, if I just squeaked into my home, I got the 20% down that I needed, I got a re-advanceable mortgage, and now I'm sitting with a $400K mortgage as per your example. Like, is that entire $400K going to be tax deductible? Like, the amount of interest that I'm paying on that $400K is what's tax deductible, or is it the portion that I'm actually utilizing to invest?
Yeah. The day you start with $400,000 in non-deductible debt, you will, with the Smith Maneuver, the plain Jane Smith Maneuver, most basic form, maybe you're out of it 3 years earlier, again, with no new money from yourself. but maybe you're out of it 3 years earlier. So for 22 years, you're going to have non-deductible debt, albeit less and less and less and less on a monthly and annual basis. It's what you're replacing that with, the reborrowing, right? Dollar for dollar. When you pay down $1,000, I'm reborrowing $1,000. That is the $1,000 that I'm borrowing to invest. So the interest on that is deductible. When I borrow that initial $400,000 to buy my house, I'm borrowing that to buy a consumption item, which is my principal residence. There's no reasonable expectation of generating income from the house I live in. You know, suites are a different story. You can deduct the interest on a portion of that. But generally, I don't expect to generate income from my home, so I cannot deduct the interest.
Right.
So it's that monthly reborrowing. And just to continue on, you know, we were talking about investing each month in securities. You can also, you know, say you want to get into investment real estate, or you want your second piece, whatever. If you're reborrowing to invest $1,000, $1,200, $2,500 a month, then you can invest in something that's relatively stable. It's going to grow over time. And then it builds up to 50K, 70K, whatever the case may be over a few years. Now you can redeem that security, that asset for cash, and then use it as a down payment on a rental property. But you're taking advantage of compound growth in the meantime.
Right. That makes sense.
It's about using the equity you're generating in your house as quickly as you can, like the wealthy do. They understand the two types of debt, non-deductible and deductible, very, very clearly, and they embrace debt, but the right type of debt.
For sure. So essentially what's going to end up happening is if you do pay, say, 100K off of your principal, you're still going to have a 400K balance because you're just re-advancing that 100K back into whatever investment you've chosen.
That's right. After X number of years, my 400 non-deductible debt's gone down to 300, but I have 100 of tax-deductible debt. And that's what's allowing me to acquire those assets, which are going to grow over time. And that's what's going to reduce my tax bill. And that's what's going to send me a tax refund, enabling me to get out of that initially 400K mortgage much quicker.
Right. Can you explain why you cannot just go and get a HELOC and use it in the Smith Maneuver compared to a re-advanceable, like a step mortgage?
Sure. So let's say I've got a $300,000 mortgage balance, just a traditional mortgage, and my house is worth $500,000. So I say, I want to pull money out of my house because I want to buy a rental property. So I go and slap a HELOC using a mortgage broker, or go to the bank, whatever. I slap a HELOC on there, and there's $100,000, ignoring the 65% HELOC rule here. There's $100,000 of immediately available credit. Now, I've still got $300 non-deductible debt. Now I have $100,000 of deductible debt because I pulled it out as a down payment on a rental property. But once I borrow that $100,000, I have no more borrowing power from that, right? Unless I reappraise and go back to the lender from the HELOC and they extend the limit, and that costs money, and I have to wait over time to do that. But if I have a re-advanceable mortgage, Manulife One, Scotia Step, a bunch of them, MCAP Fusion, whatever the case may be, and I have that $300,000 non-deductible debt, I get my re-advanceable mortgage, and because of the value of my house and the current mortgage balance I have, they will also, on the line of credit portion, give me immediately available $100,000. So I pull that out, I get my rental property. However, the first day of the next month, when I make my regular mortgage payment against that $300,000 non-deductible mortgage debt, it goes down to $299,000, but that line of credit limit opens up $1,000. So now the limit on that is $101,000. So I can pull out that extra $1,000 and invest. Same thing month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense.
Makes a lot of sense, Robinson, and we appreciate you breaking it down in that clear manner from that standpoint. You know, in the last 2 years, it's been really interesting in the lending space where, because of the current events, we've seen interest rates come down dramatically to the point right now where they're in the high ones, low twos for most families that are restructuring their homes. Some people may already have the strategy in place and some people may not. One of the biggest challenges that we find for people choosing not to refinance to take advantage of this debt, even though we quite commonly, and we actually have calculators to show our clients where they can save money, is a fear of the prepayment penalty. So the penalty to get a mortgage, which can be monstrous in many circumstances. And the second thing is just not knowing and understanding the numbers and the whys behind it. So again, maybe not forgetting about the fact that there's a giant prepayment penalty. Maybe tell us, with those big prepayment penalties, what is the advice that you're providing to people who are considering doing this now and are wondering, is it worth me paying this penalty to do this today?
Right. Firstly, I don't provide any of that advice. I'm the guy that wrote the book. I sit back in my office, read the newspaper, and eat big cookies, right? What I'm doing is training up financial professionals across the country. So realtors, mortgage brokers, investment advisors, mortgage conveyancers, insurance agents, and accountants. So when someone comes to me and says, I am Kelly from Calgary, I'm Terry from Toronto, I'm looking for a Smith Manoeuvre certified professional, sometimes they ask for an accountant, sometimes they ask for a mortgage broker. So I send them to that mortgage broker who's closest to them, and the mortgage broker does that analysis. Now, there have been penalties in the 5 figures. So huge penalties, which after an analysis is worth paying. You know, there's 4 years left in the term, the old rate versus the new much lower rate. Yes, that creates a huge penalty, but the savings over the new term almost makes it worthwhile by itself. Not quite. But then you throw in the fact that during this period of time, I am now investing for compound growth. I'm reducing my tax bill, plus I'm prepaying my mortgage. Then that math tips over in favor of refinancing, even if you're paying 10, 20,000 bucks. And it's hard to believe, but we know that math doesn't lie. And a lot of people are going to say, you know what? You've shown me the math works, that it's worth paying this penalty, but I refuse to pay that penalty. Just on principle. And that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But for those who rely on numbers, sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. But that's one of the things you have to look at. What are the savings? And you guys know how to do that very well. What are the savings by absorbing that penalty? But then you got to tack on the other financial benefits of Smith Manoeuvre implementation. And a lot of times it'll take you over the edge if you were close to begin with.
Go ahead.
One of the things I've noticed after reading your material, and you've mentioned this a couple times, is the accelerators. What is that? Can you maybe explain a little bit about what is an accelerator and why somebody would look at that as part of the strategy?
Yeah, the plain Jane Smith Maneuver, just to reiterate, is using only the regular mortgage payment that you're using anyways, whether you're doing the strategy or not, right? The accelerators also do not require you to come up with any additional personal cash flow. You can if you want, but you don't have to. And some maybe or all of them are available to any given homeowner, but there's 5 accelerators. The first one being the debt swap. Many people, it's not uncommon to have 10 grand, 30 grand, whatever, built up in securities. They've saved over the course of time. They're trying to put away for their retirement. So they got, let's say, $30,000 in mutual funds. What they can do with the appropriate financing, this re-advanceable mortgage, we're going to want to look at taxation. We're going to want to look at prepayment allowance on the mortgage. But what they can do is sell this mutual fund that they have that's worth $30,000, take the cash that they get subsequently, and make that as a prepayment against their mortgage. Then when that line of credit limit opens up dollar for dollar, as it does, they reborrow that $30,000 and they can buy the exact same investment that they had a week, 10 days earlier. So they're still invested 10 grand, but they've just immediately converted $10,000 of non-deductible debt to $10,000 of deductible debt. And that does wonderful things to your tax bill, obviously. So that's a debt swap. There's the cash flow diversion. If I've been investing $400 a month religiously from my personal checking account, which is where my employment payment comes in, maybe I'm investing, let's say, $300 a month into mutual funds. That's how I built up that $30,000 in mutual funds. Well, instead of investing directly from my checking account, I take that $300 and I make a prepayment against my mortgage. And I do this each and every month. I make a prepayment against my mortgage of that $300 above and beyond my regular mortgage payment. And when that limit on the line of credit opens up, I pull that $300 out and then I buy that mutual fund or the stock or whatever it is. So I'm still only out of pocket $300, which I was before I was doing the strategy, but I'm just making it work more than once. I'm not only getting it invested for growth, I'm also using it to get rid of my mortgage faster and also using it to increase my tax deductions. That's the cash flow diversion. There's the drip accelerators. Take any dividends that your investments are earning, your stocks, your mutual funds, don't have them reinvest automatically as most people do. Quarterly, yearly, whatever it is, when they're available, you can say, hey, Don't reinvest automatically. Give me that cash. Take that cash, prepay your mortgage, borrow it back, and then buy more units of the fund or shares of the stock. There's prime the pump. We were talking about this effectively earlier, whereas if I refinance and I have immediately available credit, I can pull that out, 30,000, 50, 100K. I can pull that out and invest directly in securities. I can use it to invest in real estate. I can invest in my business, somebody else's business. But right then, I'm generating tax deductions and I'm also getting invested for growth. Now, if I use that to buy my first investment property, as long as it's a proprietorship, I like own this property is owned in my name, not in a corporation, then I can implement the cash flow down. What most people with a rental property do, which is technically correct, is they'll take $3,000 from the renter each month and they'll turn right around and they'll make a mortgage payment on that rental property. You got a mortgage on that rental property, you got to pay it. I'm going to use my renter's, the rent to do so. That's great. Rent comes in, I turn around and pay the mortgage. Well, they're missing out on a very valuable opportunity because what they can do is, if it's proprietorship, take that $3,000 in rental receipts and prepay their own mortgage, the house in which they live. Down that non-deductible mortgage balance goes by $3,000. The line of credit limit opens up $3,000, and then I pull it out and I make the mortgage payment and other expenses on my business, that rental, and I can deduct the interest on that because I'm borrowing to invest with the expectation of generating income. My business, my rental property, I can deduct the interest. And if I'm prepaying my own mortgage by $2,000, $3,000 a month on top of the regular mortgage payment, on top of the cash flow diversion of $300 a month, we're seeing amortizations going from 25 years to well under 10.
I can imagine.
That's really cool. I've never thought of that. So I have a question on all this. Have you ever gone toe to toe with CRA on this strategy?
Totally.
Yeah.
I have not. My dad did when he wrote his book. His offices were in Saniston, just north of Victoria here. And Luann, who still works with us today, who's sitting in the front office, and in walked two gentlemen. And yes, we're agents from the CRA. We'd like to talk to Mr. Smith, please. Do you have an appointment? No, we're the CRA. We don't make appointments. So Dad was in the office and Luann Fraser said, yeah, bring one in. So Mr. Smith, we want to hear about the Smith Manoeuvre you're talking about. And so Dad, as he did, he got out a sheet of white paper and picked up his pencil and draws the mortgage and conventional mortgage. And here's the re-advanceable mortgage. And here's what happens with the mortgage payment. Here's what you do. And here's the accelerators and all that stuff. And about 3/4 of the way through it, one of the CRA agents leaned forward and said, would this work with a $75,000 mortgage? So Dad knew he had them, right? But, so they left and Fraser never heard from them again, which is, you're not going to get much more of an endorsement from the CRA.
Yeah.
But, they understood that this is all completely legal. We're doing what the techniques of the wealthy, borrowing to invest, generate tax deductions, accrue assets, which otherwise you weren't able to do. Now this is available to your average Canadian homeowner. And that's all we're doing is we're borrowing to invest with the reasonable expectation of generating income. Now, when I was an advisor, I put CRA employees into the Smith Manoeuvre. But they're lawyers, accountants, police officers, pilots, engineers, I mean, you name it, judges, I'm pretty sure. So yes, the legality of it, when you look at the Smith Manoeuvre calculator, which I've developed, you start seeing these numbers and you start thinking, how can this be possible without any new cash flow from my pocket? How can this be how can the government be willing to give back so much in tax refunds across Canada? How could they be willing to do so? And the answer is because it's good for Canada. The CRA knows that if I borrow to invest, yes, they have to give me a tax deduction, results in a refund. But what's the benefit of that? Well, the benefit is I'm borrowing to invest. I'm borrowing into business. I'm helping build business. By me investing in business, by all these hundreds of thousands of Canadians investing in businesses, these businesses are able to grow. These businesses then have more income that the CRA can tax. Because they're growing, they have to hire more employees whom the government can tax. So it's good all the way around. It's just giving money back to the homeowner so that they can get more from business and employees, right? So they know that it's no one's losing here.
Right.
Yeah. Like you've mentioned some fantastic, like these accelerators, fantastic ideas. Like these are really good nuggets for somebody to take away. When I have this conversation, all I'm thinking of like, I need to do this myself, right? Like this is gold. But why would somebody potentially not do this? Like what are some of the risks that somebody should consider before looking at
Sure.
this strategy?
Yeah. Well, with this strategy, the older one is typically the less period of time there is until they want to slow down or retire. So the less period of time there is for this money to grow, compound for them. Now, that's not to say someone who's 55 or 60 shouldn't seriously look at it, because if they can generate deductions versus not generate deductions, they're better off with deductions. They're better off by investing for their future now, but they're not going to see as big a benefit. It's the younger you are, the more benefit there is. Also, the higher tax bracket you're in, the more benefit there is, because you and I can earn the same amount of deductions, but if you're at a higher marginal tax rate than I am, you're going to get a bigger refund than I will. But still, I'm happy with any refund, I would think. One of the biggest things is, investor know thyself, right? If you're the type of person who is so debt averse that the idea of maintaining your debt, which is what we're asking the homeowner to do here, if that gives you the chills, then, don't force yourself to do this, because sleep at night factor is just as important for quality of life as having more money in retirement, right? We don't want to be stressed out by the time we get to enjoy that money. So, if you don't have the risk tolerance, if you can't stomach market fluctuations, then try some other strategy. So
yep. We couldn't agree more on that piece. We have the same conversation of someone who just doesn't feel comfortable with the variable rate mortgage just in general. Those little pieces like that, again, if it's going to make you that uncomfortable, then it doesn't make a lot of sense, right?
Exactly.
But to your Robinson, to your point, I mean, you shared a lot of great examples here, and some of the ones that struck a chord with us were, I think the real estate investment concept that you explained there, which was great and well broken down, and I'm sure some of the listeners are going to hear that piece. For anyone listening, I'm just going to tease this right now because we're not finished yet, but we're gonna post a separate video with Robinson on our platforms where he's going to walk through what he calls his Smith Man calculator, I believe. Is that right, Robinson? The right name for it?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So he's going to tease that out. We'll put a separate video up on the channel that you guys can check that out if you want to see it in action and so forth. But I guess to my piece, the just the mechanics is what I'm kind of interested in at this point right now. So someone is already doing this this maneuver, and maybe there are someone who's been doing it for 2 or 3 years, and now they want to take advantage of an increase in property value or reduction in interest rates or something of that nature. Is there anything that they need to be aware of aside from just refinancing into a similar type of product when considering continuing with this program? Is there anything that we should be aware of there, or is it just a matter of just tracking expenses?
Well, no, it's important that, you use a Smith Manoeuvre certified professional mortgage broker, investment advisor, accountant. There are things to be aware of. Firstly, going through the monthly process when you're in the strategy is very important. You don't want to mix two types of debt and all that sort of fun stuff. But if you're simply refinancing to access more equity, chances are that your lender, you can stay with your lender and they'll just up the limit and you can pull it out and leave all the existing current tracking that you have in place. The tricky part comes when, as happens all the time, I want to sell the house I'm in and move to another house, and I'm halfway through the Smith Maneuver. What do I do? Well, there's a way to deal with that. But again, you need to understand how this process works, and that's why you need these certified brokers and conveyancers, et cetera, because it's possible to transfer the deductible debt that you've accrued on the house you're selling over to the house that you're buying now. And that way, the new mortgage on the new house doesn't all have to be non-deductible again, and you got to start fresh. So it's important to know how to structure that transaction. And that's what the Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals understand very clearly. But the point is that if I understand that I'm not in my forever home, if I know that I'm going to be moving in the future, that does not stop me from taking advantage of the strategy, because there is a way to transfer that debt and keep on going. So, yeah, there's things to know, but it's possible to do. Absolutely.
What about this, Robinson? Average consumer that you see, is if maybe there is one. I know there's different values of homes across the country, but maybe we can just speak to your experience in the past, or maybe you have a general kind of ideal client that you could share with us. Could you share with like an average story as to what someone's situation could be, how much they would actually quantify, how much money that they would potentially save on their taxes or situation? Is there maybe a situation that you could let us know of?
Yeah, well, we're going to have fun, in the next segment, I guess, going through the Smith Man calculator. But generally, what I see is the average Canadian, they're not wealthy, they're not poor, they're they're making 150 grand a year. They got a house and family, and maybe one or both are working. We're looking probably over the course of a typical 25-year amortization, a net worth improvement of around $400,000, and taking off 2.5, 3 years of the amortization of the mortgage, just doing the plain Jane Smith Manoeuvre. So again, that's just the regular mortgage payment, taking advantage of that. We throw in the accelerators, and then things start to pick up pretty quickly.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, that's good stuff. I mean, you've given us a really good feedback here. I want to leave some conversations open to kind of continue to pick up here going forward as we move into kind of a separate scene where we'll go through this. But I think for anybody who wants to learn more about this, we have some feedback here that Robinson has I believe it's a newer book out at this point right now. Robinson, what's the book that you're selling?
Yeah, this I released it almost exactly a year ago, actually, November last year. It's called Master Your Mortgage for Financial Freedom. And it hit #1 in 22 categories on Amazon on launch day. I'm very proud to announce that's the only time you'll hear me brag, guys. And it's still selling very well. I checked this morning, it was still #1 in financing mortgages. So the book is selling well, and lots of inquiries coming into the website, and I get to direct these homeowners to Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals across the country.
Very cool. Awesome. Very cool.
You can find the book at smithman.net, www.smithman.net. But again, if you don't want to buy it for whatever reason, you don't have to. The important thing is to gain the knowledge. So go to the library and check it out for free, right?
Right. Awesome. Good place to find it. Well, what we'll be doing here, for anybody listening to the show, we're going to have all the links up where you can find Robinson on. I know he's quite active on LinkedIn, and these days doing some great interviews just like this across the place. We will make sure to be the conduit to get you over to see and meet and get introduced to Robinson's strategies through his book and his resources. And anyone that's certified as mentioned, or if you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly and we'll make sure to take care of you. Robinson, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, my man. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to hopefully having you on again in the future.
You got it. Anytime, guys. It's been a pleasure.